I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, real conversations to help high earners make sharper decisions so their money works as hard as they do. This is episode number 49, and today I'm joined by Gabe Lullo, who's the CEO of AlleyOop, to break down how founders and revenue leaders build a real outbound engine using SDRs to bridge marketing and sales, taking prospecting off of your top closers' plates and creating consistent at-bats so growth doesn't depend on heroic quarters. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if you find the show valuable, I'd really appreciate you leaving a quick review. Thanks so much and enjoy.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. All right, Gabe, thanks for joining the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, man. Excited to have you today. Let's have some fun.
Let's do it, man. I'm ready to roll. Dan, I'm a big fan of yours, and I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah. I'm excited to chat because, we've got a few things in common and some mutual interests, not the least of which is how to develop a revenue engine. So we're gonna get into that a little bit more. But before we do that, Gabe, tell our listeners a little bit about you, what you and your firm AlleyOop, which I love the name of that firm. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about the genesis of that as well. But tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got into this role.
Yeah, well, like the name, it's a basketball term for those who don't follow basketball. Alley-oop is really that amazing shot, right? That moment in the game where someone throws the ball up perfectly right next to the basket, and then another player comes up, grabs it in midair, and slam dunks it. And it's just that amazing, cannon finish moment, right? And the reality is that we take that analogy and bring it to sales and sales development. Right now, marketing and sales have been always the two departments for running a go-to-market engine, but there's that department in between they call sales development or business development. And that's where we sit. We know our lane, and our lane is to not mess with the other two, but to really help bridge the gap between marketing and sales. And so our team, we have hundreds of SDRs making millions of phone calls, outreach every single, and our clients come in and we can build them an on-brand SDR department for them and run it for them and execute it for them. So they don't have to worry about managing it or running it. And we generate introductions, leads, appointments, and book demos right on their calendars.
Very, very cool. All right. So let's get into that a little bit more. The struggle between sales and marketing is as old as time, as you and I know, and most of our listeners know that I have a revenue leadership as far as our client base is concerned. So tell us a little bit about, when, how, give us the start for AlleyOop. Like, how did you guys get started and how did you kind of go at sort of, filling this gap that we know is pretty pronounced out there?
Yeah. So 18 years ago when we started, it was a sales training organization. So we would come in and really train and teach, whether it was Sandler training or different methodologies on how to actually enhance and enable existing full cycle sales teams. And one of our clients literally asked us, hey, we don't need actual training. Our sales teams are killers, man. They just need more at bats. They just need more appointments on their calendar. And like, do you have any SDRs? And we're like, what's an SDR? And so we really started off with literally a need in the market from one of our, potential clients. And ironically, that client was a small company back then, infancy, but it's now ZoomInfo, one of the largest data providers in the world. So when we were asked that, we built out a sales development team for them and ran it successfully until they went IPO. But long story short, that's really where we started with the concept, and then have been building SDR functions for many, many, many companies. So that was our actual starting point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think if you ask, I sit on two sides of the fences here, being that I had a corporate role and led large sales teams, and now being a business owner, I interact with folks in both seats, sort of the revenue executive, revenue leader, and also the smaller business owner. And I think most people would say exactly what you just said, right? I need more at bats, right? If I get more at bats, I'm going to, my average will stay the same, right? To keep the sports terms going, then my average will stay the same, but I'm obviously going to add a lot of top line growth. So like, how do you help firms to get more at bats?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about opportunity cost. So you're a financial guy. So here's our really quick math on the napkin math that we actually sit down with on every single prospecting call. And we ask them this question. There's three specific questions. Question number one, how many sellers right now are on your sales floor? And that could be answered literally simply with one, and that's the founder, right? The founder is the only person selling. That's the answer. But let's just say it's a bigger company, but yet a very small company. They only have two salespeople on the sales floor. So we have two sellers. Okay. My next question, number two, is how much of their day is being spent prospecting and how much of their day is being spent presenting and closing deals? And usually I'm hearing 60, 40, 70, 30. And usually the bigger number is actually of them prospecting. So they're self-generating, doing cold calls, reaching out to people and trying to schedule their days and their weeks. And then I look at it, okay, how much did they sell last year? Oh, they sell $5 million. So what I do is I take that percentage of them prospecting, I multiply it by that revenue, and that's how much money they could have made next year if they took prospecting off their desk and had a firm or us run it for them exclusively. And now your sellers, your people who are taking those at bats, are spending 100% of their day presenting and closing deals instead of 30 or 40% of their day. And that's really where we come in and what we look for. How we do that is we have to obviously build them a very structured campaign based on their ideal client profile. We run a playbook and design it for them exclusively. We bring in data. So we actually supply them with ZoomInfo data and other companies we use in the data world. And then we use the right technologies depending on where and how much volume we need to actually make. And then we use technologies and tools to enable our reps. And then we look at, okay, reps do we have available to us that are similar in the type of experience that this company is representing? And then we build them that campaign and then execute. And we run campaigns 6 months at a time. And we usually see a benchmarking happening after those 90 days of prospecting. And then we see predictable results moving forward.
Got it. So it's typically like a 6-month engagement. You're going to
Correct.
do everything you just said, plus supply the people, and then
Yes.
sort of measure what the ROI is from that campaign.
Yep. And we're doing email and we're doing significant amount of phone calls. Our reps with our tech stack are able to execute $150 to $200 a day on average, which is literally 3 to 4x industry averages. And we use technology to make that happen. And we're also scoring leads as well on the front end. So we're not just calling, throwing mud against the wall and seeing what sticks. So we're very intentional about using tools to get intention of why we're prospecting, who we're prospecting, when we're prospecting, how many times we're prospecting. And that math yields results. And so we're setting up appointments, qualifying those appointments, and literally embedding it right into their CRM and on their calendar. Or we actually pass over warmer leads. Now, these aren't marketing leads. These are people we've actually had conversations with. But the only thing that's is not 100% a hot lead is because of timing. Maybe they just started at their new company and they need a month to settle in. Maybe they just launched a new initiative or they just hired a group of people and they need a month to settle in. If someone is interested to talk within a 90-day period of time, we pass those over so our clients can nurture them directly. But our North Stars, of course, is a hot meeting booked on the calendar, and that's what we deliver.
Yeah, and I know you told me before we went on live that you're able to, or being that you've been in this for 18 years, you've been able to develop these systems and processes for a pretty wide range of companies, verticals, sizes, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about that experience. I'm curious how your approach may differ from working with a ZoomInfo to maybe a small company that all of the sales is being developed by the founder.
Right. So we've worked with 1,600 different brands over the last 18 years across every vertical industry and market and size you can think of. Now, we don't do B2C. We are not, reaching out to people on Instagram. We're in the B2B space. Right. But if there is an appointment or a demo or a discovery call that sits within your sales journey, very much we can build a program or campaign around it just based on our previous experiences. So yeah, we look at first off the ideal client profile and the total addressable market, and we work backwards from there. If you have a huge total addressable market, maybe a higher volume play with a parallel or a power dialer makes the most amount of sense, but it may not even be the phone. Maybe your prospects don't pick up the phone. Maybe you're selling a cybersecurity and it's an impossibility. So what do we do differently there? Maybe you're calling HR people or recruiters and they're living on LinkedIn. Well, maybe you should do a LinkedIn outbound campaign and we can live there Now, we do believe in multi-channel, multi-threading, and doing every single thing we can to at least get someone's attention. But we definitely want to triple down on things that your audience is just living on. So that's what we focus on.
You started to touch on what was going to be my next question, which is kind of like the ollie, then the oop. So I imagine that the handoff from your team and your campaign over to your client is typically just a book demo call, or is there typically some sort of like warm introduction handoff in between?
Yeah, so we like to make it as warm as humanly possible. So it's not just one we put on the calendar and hope it and pray it shows up. Just because we put meetings on the calendar, that's not what we get excited about. We get obviously excited just as our clients get excited about meetings that actually show up, that actually have interest. So what we want to do is we want to actually hold us responsible to everything up into the meeting. So we do that through reminders. We do that through connecting on LinkedIn. And we do that through a warm introduction email to the salesperson who is at our client and the prospect themselves. We're also enabling our clients in a big way. So we're sending them a push notification of all the details they need to know about that prospect, including the recording of the call that we had with them and an AI transcript of those notes as well. So on the client side, they're going into that demo with literally every single thing they need, including the conversation we had with them, to go into that call as prepared as humanly possible.
Yeah, I love it. You also touched on a point that is firmly and passionately believe, and frankly, I've built my whole business structure around, which is, um, sort of this bifurcation of sales and service. I think that's been done for a long time, especially in the tech space. But you mentioned allowing the founder or the CEO to get out of the sales lane and allow that to be done really intentionally, really on a full-time basis. And what I love about that, and I'm curious to hear your perspective, is I believe that when there's a function that's as important as sales, and I'll call it sales and marketing together, having somebody try to like do that part time and then have all these other priorities, it really, really gets watered down. And frankly, I tried to do it at some point in time in my career, and I didn't really love what my day to day looked like. So I'm a big believer in separating roles, being really, really targeted in the function that you're performing, and allowing you to have kind of focus and clarity around your day. How have you seen that sort of translate, especially with like founder led sales teams?
Well, they're typically outsourcing everything else when you start a
Right.
company, right? Going to professionals like you for financial, needs. Are they building is the founder building the website? Are they probably not, right?
No.
So it's like they're using a marketing firm to build the website. They're not building the website part-time, right?
Right.
So, probably using an outsourced HR function to support the handful of employees that they currently have. They don't actually have a head of HR when they have 3 employees. So
Right.
they're already outsourcing all the other parts of their business, usually maybe do a staffing firm to source new hires as well. So having a turned on function that is completely customized and white labeled for prospecting, I believe should be treated no different than hiring a company to build your website. And so just having that done right and turned on all the time is what's the most important. Because everyone will say in sales, the number one thing in sales is consistency.
Yeah.
And just like, working out, you can't get in shape if you work out, part-time once or twice a month. Similarly here, you need to be prospecting every minute of every single day if you want to do it right. And it's very difficult to do that when you're juggling 5 other things running the company. So that's why I think you should just look at it from that lens and that perspective, like you do all the other parts of your business when you're starting up.
Yeah, we could there's so many good analogies between sales and exercising. I mean, that's a pretty pronounced one. I'm with you on that one. All right. So let's learn a little bit more about you, Gabe. How did you get into this? Tell me a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, I started off in recruiting. So always been in the people business. So I started off in executive search and executive staffing. And find my way really loving recruiting for revenue positions and heads of sales and heads of marketing. And then I got into that sales training function where I was actually training salespeople on how to sell. And then once we realized that there was a need in the market for sales development, that's where we actually doubled down on the SDR world with AlleyOop. So that was essentially my journey to the company.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. Tell me a little bit about like is there one decision you made? Is there like a pivotal point within your career that sort of shaped and brought you to where you're at today, leading alley?
Yeah, I mean, I was in school and I thought I wanted to go out and, be a stockbroker. I saw a boiler room and I'm like, oh, I gotta go and, sell stocks. And so I was doing internships in New York City and realizing, this is something I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden 9/11 happened.
Yeah,
And there was job freezes across the board. All of the places that I interned for weren't hiring because of everything that was happening. And so I just kind of like thought, what do I do next? And I actually took the LSATs, got into law school, and I was going to go to law school. Now I had
okay.
zero interest in wanting to do that, but I just felt like that's what I needed to do because there was no other opportunities. And I was always told, "Hey, Gabe, you know how to talk. So you should be a good lawyer." The people who
Yeah,
are in
sure.
sales,
I
I know a
got
lot
I,
of
I
people.
got I got that as well growing up. I got a lot of that
Every
as well.
person who knows sales have been told they should be a lawyer in somewhat part of their life, usually early on, right?
Sure.
So I was that guy. And then I said, you know what? I just don't know if I really want to do this. And then I was presented with an opportunity to work for my good friend's dad's recruiting business.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to defer for 1 year and go, hard on this. And I made six figures, as a 21-year-old in that space, and I never looked back. So that was a massive decision point. Kind of like that fork in the road is like, do I go out and be a lawyer and go down that road? Or do I do everything my parents, my friends, and all of my associates tell me I shouldn't do and get a sales job? And
Right.
so I did that. And, I'm really happy I did.
Good for you. Good for you. Tell us a little bit about your financial journey along the way, right? So, sales professionals is interesting because we do a lot of work with sales professionals, and it's interesting because you've got this dynamic of like eat what you kill, variable pay, lack of consistency, great upside, but a lot of downside. So, how has that come through in your financial journey? Having been in some way, shape, or form in a sales role for the majority of your.
Yeah, I mean, well, financially, I've always had an incentive, a commission, a bonus, a carrot, if you will, in front of me.
Yep.
And I think that is extremely motivating for me. If you present that to my wife or my cousin or my sister, that is the opposite of motivation. Right. So I know for a fact that, people just can't, be in a position where, they're paid based on performance. I mean, for 6 years of my life, 7 years of my life, I was commission only, and that was by choice because I made more in commission only comp plan than I did on a hybrid comp plan. And so that to me always excites me and it motivates me. So from a financial perspective, that keeps me going. And I've never not gotten some sort of commission in my life, and I've been doing this for for 25 years. But at the end of the day, I think it's super important to be self-aware of that because it is not for everybody. And there's a huge turnover in sales, more so than working in the restaurant business. And if you think about it, right? So you have to be wired for it and be ready for making those types of financial commitments. Because to your point, 1 month you're eating lobster and the other month you're eating ramen noodles. So that's way too up and down for people. And so you have to be consistent and be financially aware of that.
I love that. I mean, I think that like, and it's not an easy process to go through. Sometimes you just have to get it with experience, but identifying if you're made for variable compensation, performance based pay. The earlier you can identify that in your career, frankly, I think the better off you will be. And that helps to probably frame a lot of decisions. I've seen folks, it take them a long time to figure that out, frankly. But I think, whether you're a sales professional or even a business owner, you're going to have some level of risk that you have to deal with. How have you seen the best professionals that you've been around? Because I'm sure you've been around some great sellers and some great business owners. How have you seen the best people that you've been around kind of manage that and use it as a motivation, but not have it be something that like has a negative impact on their performance, but also their life and their relationships? Because I've seen that happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like you look at analogies when you look at the boxer, right? If you're getting backed into the corner, do you fold and say, uncle, or do you come out swinging? And you
Right.
have to have that back in the corner type mentality many, many times when you're either building a business or running a sales career. And if you think about it, I treat my sellers who work for us, they have a salary, they have a commission, but I enable them and talk to them as if they are building their company within my company.
Right.
And if you're not operating as a seller, like an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or, think about it like a franchise, if you will, at your job, then you're going to have the tough times completely take you out. I mean, I love podcasting. We have our own podcast. It's called Do Hard Things. And the reality is it's born on this story. I grew up in a blue collar town of Buffalo, New York. You know it well. And most people in my family and in my upbringing were always having to do something physical to make money. They actually had to lift heavy things. They had to go snowplow. They had to go on the roof, and they had to fall off the roof and get hurt on the job. Like, they were sweating. They were smelling like fish at the end of the restaurant shift. Like, that was the family that I grew up in. And then I, at 11, realized I was doing a fundraiser for my school, and I was selling T-shirts to save our local Niagara Falls aquarium.
Okay.
And it was funny. I actually sold more T-shirts than any student out of all the schools regionally. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to talk and make money. This is like mind-bending information.
How cool is this?
How cool is this? I don't have to lift heavy things. I don't have to get hurt on the job. This is great. But then when I realized that it's just as hard, and it's not hard talking to people, and yet it is hard for some, but you can figure that out. The hard part is what you just said, is going through the dumps, is going through the inconsistencies, it's going through the challenges, and it's doing the hard things, even though it's not physically challenging. And that's where I think people have to really get their mindset checked. Who are you listening to? Who are you following? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? You kind of have to get obsessed with just getting better every single day at this, or you'll be left behind, especially in the world of AI.
I love it. I love it. That's a great place to pause, and we're going to transition now into the lightning round, Gabe. So I never give our audience much of a heads up on the lightning round, because we just want it to be super organic. So here's the deal. First thought that comes to your mind could be a long, drawn out thought, could be a story, could be one word answer, whatever comes to your mind. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
All right, let's do it. We'll start with an easy one. I think it's an easy one. One meal for the rest of your life. What would it be?
Well, I'm from Buffalo, so it has to be chicken wings.
All right. So I happen to know Buffalo well. I used to have an office there. What is your wing spot in Buffalo? Because there's always been a lot of debate around that. What's your spot?
There is a big debate, and I'm asked this a lot. And we actually have a family that has gone to pretty much everyone, and we grade it and we rate it. So we're very fanatical about this. I like Gabriel's Gate, and no, I don't. I'm not affiliated, even though it's the same name as mine.
Yes.
It's Gabriel's Gate on Allen Street in downtown Buffalo. Very, very good wings. But also there's, of course, Duff's, which is pretty.
Duff's is popular.
Yeah, Anchor Bar, which is where they started it. Yeah, and then you can look at so many now, but the underground, the place. If you come here and you talk to the locals, they'll probably throw Gabriel's Gate at you for some.
Yep, I've had Gabriel's Gate. Very, very good. I think I've had each of those three that you mentioned. So
all right,
awesome. I love it. Really good stuff. Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right. This will be an interesting one for you, because I know that you surround your clients with technology and tools to help them to have the alley-oop, so to speak. What's one tool or technology other than your computer or your phone that you can't live without?
My camera. And the reality is that I buy a 1080p camera for every single employee at my company the day they start. And I don't rely on their MacBook camera, because I don't want the nostril view. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, right? You're looking at your laptop and you get this visual nostril view coming at you. The reality is we are a fully remote company with hundreds of employees, and salespeople are people. And you need to see the other person. Now, I'm not talking about just for prospects and conversations like you and I are having, which are super important to have a good camera, but just internal conversations with your managers and colleagues. It is so important. Every one of our sales reps live on a video sales floor, and they're literally seeing the other people next to them, similar to like what you would expect in office in a cubicle type setting or an open floor concept, but virtually. And it's so important to really understand what people are thinking, how they're communicating. Body language is so important. So camera technology for us is really first when it comes to our ability to communicate.
And do you have a recommendation there for those that are looking to improve there? I don't necessarily need you to plug any specific brands, but like, are you just getting like a webcam instead of just using their typical laptop camera? What are your thoughts for sellers out there as to how they can show up literally the best way possible on these virtual calls?
I have a $2,000 Canon, real camera. Now that's my webcam. And it's, I graduated to that because I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing videos, but I want to stand out when it comes to camera. You can look at things that are just at $200. Logitech cameras are really good. They're out there. I would not recommend spending more than $100 to $200 on a camera unless you're going into the podcasting world.
Right.
But that positioning of it, so you're making eye contact, the
Right.
lighting that you're having so you actually look good on camera.
Yep.
Those are things to think about when doing sales demos and video calls each and every single day. I'm telling you, it sounds kind of like, just nuance, but it's so important when making a first impression.
I love it. Great advice. I completely agree with that one. You mentioned books earlier. Is there a book that influence how you think or lead?
Yeah, I mean, my original book is called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. That's one of the
Yeah.
first books that I read. Anything from him, he's written 80 books. I've seen him live at seminars and conferences. One of the things in there is there's different laws, right? The one is the law of association. So if you look at the sum total, and you could talk economically, of the 5 people you associate with and hang out with, and if you statistically look at their incomes and you do the average of that, it's right around probably what you're making, right? So that law of averages is so important. There's so many other laws that are in there that are super, super important that taught me the basics and fundamentals of leadership.
Love it. Love it. What's one habit that you would say has had a major impact on your success?
I prospect every day.
Okay.
I'm the CEO of a prospecting company, so that sounds like I should be doing it, but there is really no need for me to be doing that every day. I have a lot of people doing that for me and with us, but I still do it because it keeps me sharp, right? When someone who's brand new decides, hey, to jump in my Slack channel and asks me for help or advice, I can give him that advice or her that advice that is actually relevant.
Because you're doing
It
it.
also helps you. Yeah, it helps you understand what the market is doing. It helps you understand what your competitors are doing. It helps you understand, just being aware of what's going on in the market because that's our product. But of course, it also brings us business too, which is of course is fun. But being the first person prospecting, especially if you're a founder, even though, like I said before, you don't want to be doing it all day, like you are probably now, hire us to do it, but you still want to be in those conversations and in those relevant meetings, even if it's just a few times a week.
Love it. Can you share a bucket list item, one that you've already accomplished and maybe one that you're working towards?
This is a good one. Well, I jumped out of an airplane
Okay.
and
All right. That's good.
I
Check that.
convinced my I convinced my wife, who I would tell you if I had all the money in the world, and I bet I would have never convinced her to come with me, but I did. And she thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And so we did jump out of an airplane, and that was super fun. And we're big F1 fans. So our next thing is to actually go to an F1 race. That's our goal to do it this year. So we're excited to do that and excited to see more attraction on that sport.
I love it. I love it. Best money under $1,000. So the best purchase under $1,000 you've ever spent.
Oh my gosh. We like to travel. So, I mean, I love buying luggage. We bought some really nice luggage and it just changed our way. And we actually like to travel more because it
Sure.
just feels good. So
Yeah.
traveling to us is great. We were in 3 different cities the last 3 weekends alone. Working remotely allows us to do that. And so just being excited to see the world, I think that allows us to do that for sure.
Love it. Love it. Good stuff. All right. Last one. Advice you would give your younger self. What would it be?
That's a great one. I would say the biggest thing is to just put yourself out there more. And I know that's kind of weird because in sales, that's literally what the whole game is. But I slept on content creation for a
Yeah.
long time. 4 years ago, I started posting on LinkedIn and I literally had 2,000 followers. Now I have, a lot more. But I will say I would have done that a lot earlier. So put yourself out there, create content right from from the horse's mouth, I think is the most important thing you could be doing. I could be doing a lot of other things right now, but I'm here with you because I think this is super valuable to get not only, yourself out there, but to network and to meet people and to be aware. I should have started a podcast a long time ago. I should have posted on LinkedIn a long time ago. That's what I would have told myself in my earlier days.
I second those. Better late than never for sure, but I second both of those. All
Yeah,
right.
for
And
sure.
then finally, if our listeners want to connect with you, collaborate, learn more about AlleyOop, what's the best way to follow you, connect with you, learn more about your firm?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I
Cool.
post twice a day myself every day.
Wow.
We have a ton of content also being reshared from my profile from my team who's posting. And so there's a lot of great free advice and content there. I
Love
tell
it.
people if you can watch all my videos, you can do what we do, or you can save yourself a lot of time and we can do it for you. But either way, we're very active and you can just DM me or send me a connection request with a note. There's a lot pending. So just send me a note. Let me know you saw us on the show and we'll
Sure.
send a connection back and have a conversation.
I love it. I love it. Great stuff. Gabe, thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us today. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter and YouTube channel, all free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, prioritize your version of a rich life.